I'm Andrea Flores, and you're watching CBSN Denver. Every week, we've reported on the huge surge in unemployment claims Colorado is seeing. We now know many of you are looking for jobs, and we want to help. That's why CBS4 has teamed up with Andrew Hudson's Jobs List to bring you free job-seeking seminars. Today's 1-hour seminar is all about answering common questions we all have when looking for a new position. Job expert Andrew Hudson is joined by career advisor Liz Ryan. Andrew, we'll let you take it away.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you so much to CBS for doing this. We're just able to reach such a wider audience with CBS's participation. And I know that this is such a universal issue, particularly right now with everything that is going on. There's layoffs and unemployment is skyrocketing. And it's just such a surreal place that we all find ourselves in right now. I mean, who would have thought less than 6 weeks ago we were at record unemployment? I mean, we were almost at full employment. It's just crazy. It was like below 3%. A couple of housekeeping things. I see a few of you still have your video on. If you could turn off your video, that would be really helpful. We're anticipating about 300 people that are going to be on here. And I just want to make sure that, number one, when we record this, that your pictures aren't included in if you didn't want them to be included. But this is going to be a great session. Just a couple of other housekeeping things. We've had 5 sessions so far, and all career-related advice, from reinvention to finding a job in the nonprofit world. And many of you participated last week or earlier this week with Deborah Fine talking about the fine art of small talk in the job search. It was just phenomenal. And then coming to on Friday, we're going to have Janine Vanderberg, who's going to be talking about job seeking for older Americans. And also, you know, her message is really not just for job seekers, it's also for the workplace and how we have these hidden biases against people based on their age, as well as other things. And she's an expert. And that's one of the things that I appreciate so much, is that so many experts have agreed to do this. They're doing this on their own dime. They're willing to come out here and share their advice. And, you know, I like people who are experts, who are in the field. They're on the front lines. They're not just opinions. These are folks who are actually out there doing the research and understanding these types of issues. And that's who we have today. I mean, my living room is like, it's on fire. It's so bright because we have one of the best, the rock stars of job search here with us today, and Liz Ryan. She is the Julia Roberts of job search. She's the Meryl Streep of career management. I mean, she is one of these people that we are just so honored to have here today. If you don't know who Liz Ryan is, she's a former Fortune 500 HR senior VP. She's the world's most widely read career advisor, a beloved mentor to millions of people across the world. If you don't follow her, make sure you do. Follow her on Twitter, which is @HumanWorkplace, or go to her website at humanworkplace.com. And also, you know, she has some wonderful publications online. She's written 3 separate books that are specific to job search. Roadmap to Your New Career is one. Get the Job You Deserve is another. And then Launching Your Consulting Business is another. She also has some additional online publications that are specific to different careers. She's a consultant. She is a prolific writer. She has just incredible background. And she's fun. She's authentic. She's raw. She doesn't pull any punches. This is about job seeking as well as it is about the workplace in general. So she's going to be taking your questions about job seeking, about career management, and the professional work world in general. If you are on Zoom, you can send us questions via the chat box. Just, you can see it right there in front of you. If you are listening to this on Facebook or on CBS, please text those questions to me at 720-289-5877. And I will share those as we go through. We're going to get to as many questions as we can. If we can't get to all the questions, I'm going to keep track of them and do as many as I can. Or if you have a question later on that you weren't able to ask during this session, just text me later and we'll figure this out. I'm also always available at Andrew Hudson. So it's ahudson@ahjobslist.com. And please don't forget to visit my website as well. Believe it or not, companies are still hiring. I mean, the window of the lifespan of a job posting is usually about 6 to 8 weeks in terms of when they post it to when they actually go through all the interviews and do the hiring. So companies are starting to loosen up a little bit, and we're starting to see more and more jobs become available. But Liz, let's just address the elephant in the room. We are now living in unprecedented times. A massive amount of furloughs, layoffs, and we're having this big conversation around the country. What's going to happen when we start to get the economy back on track? And what do you think this is going to mean for the workplace? I mean, so many people have right now, they're kind of like working from home. And this is something that, companies have been grappling with for a long time. But what do you think is going to happen? What are some things that should happen?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Andrew, thanks so much for having me today. And folks, thanks for showing up. I know you have a lot of other things you could be doing. And thanks so much to Channel 4 for hosting this series. I think it's just magnificent. Yeah, what a shock to the system, right? As you said, almost record employment, incredibly low unemployment 6-8 weeks ago to millions of people laid off in the intervening time. So the first thing I want to say about that is that if you got laid off, if you lost your job, apply for unemployment. If you're not sure you're eligible, apply. Colorado, like many states, has expanded their set of benefits. Go ahead and apply. They're looking at unemployment applications now from independent contractors, which is obviously new. That wasn't the way it worked before. Go ahead and fill out an application. Likewise, if you got furloughed, if you don't know when you're going back to work or whether you're going back to work to get paid, apply for unemployment. So let's get that out of the way. That's very important because that's income coming in the door while you're job hunting. Furloughed is great. It typically means the company intends to bring you back and they're typically going to pay your health insurance or whatever portion of the health insurance they were paying before. But if you're not getting paid, you're eligible or theoretically eligible for unemployment compensation in the amount, based on the amount you were earning. Okay, get that out of the way. So you're so right, Andrew. People are still hiring. There are still new jobs being posted and companies are still interviewing. I'm hearing from human workplace followers and folks on Twitter and LinkedIn and everywhere, they are interviewing. It is ongoing. There are a lot of people interviewing for jobs through Skype and Zoom and getting hired and immediately starting to work from home. So I'm talking now about what we call, knowledge work, white collar jobs where they get hired and they work from home. Maybe at some point they'll go into an office, but right now they're getting the job and they're onboarding and they're doing all the training, getting set up with their logins and they're working from home. So don't stop job hunting just because you read that there are massive layoffs. It's true, but companies are still hiring. You talked about working from home. Is that the question? Is that going to persist?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, working from home is a big passion of mine in the sense of advocating for people to be able to work from home. Of course, not every job can be done from home. All of these essential roles are essential because you got to be there, right? So God bless those people. We all owe them a huge debt of gratitude. But there has been actually a backslide in the US over the last 20 years in companies allowing people to work from home. It was actually better before than it is now. And you guys might remember when Marissa Mayer took over at Yahoo, she called everybody back to the office. It's a mindset. You're not working as hard if you're at home. I, beg to differ from my own experience and thousands of people I've talked to about this and observed. It's time that corporations, not-for-profits, government institutions were a lot more open to having people work from home. So my hope is an expectation that this crisis will get some of those organizations to realize they've been wasting a lot of money, cycles, and time. Just your commuting time is time that you could be productive at work, and not to mention the carbon footprint and the dry cleaning bills and the hassle factor and the real estate costs and the office maintenance costs. I was reading about the shortage of bathroom tissue, toilet paper. And they said, it's not hoarding. It's not that people are hoarding. It's that they're not going to the office. they're not going to a place where they would use their facilities, right? And their toilet paper. And so you bear certain costs by working at home, but many, many working people feel it's worth it. They would rather work at home. They're just as productive, if not more so. They can put a laundry in, or put something in the crock pot or whatever. And I hope that we see a trend in that direction. I understand if you're dying to get back to the office, I'm with you in that. I know a lot of people feel that way, but I do think we've been very slow to get out of the gate when it comes to having people work from home.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of this, and you address this a little bit on Twitter, is how employees are going to determine that you can come back to work safely, and how are employees going to feel as if they are if they can be there safely.
Absolutely. I asked that question, as you mentioned, Andrew, a few days ago on Twitter. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at Human Workplace. And I said, how is your employer determining when it's safe to come back to work? And virtually everybody who had heard from their employer on that topic said they're relying on the governor. Depending where you live, that could be a very dicey proposition, because there is this pressure to get the economy moving and get people back to work, maybe precipitously. We have no vaccine, we have no widespread testing, and we have no effective treatment. So that's a scary situation in terms of feeling like you're pressed to get on the subway or get on the highway and go back to work right away. It's not appropriate. Now, everybody's under the gun right now, but I do find some fault with OSHA, federal agency in charge of workplace safety, that we don't have better guidelines that say, here's when people should be able to go back to work based on what their job is. We don't have anything like that. So you may have a very young and inexperienced person making the decision, you need to get back to work before it's really appropriate.
I think the other thing that I'm hearing a lot of is that companies are going to be using these big machines that you have to walk through to take your temperature. And
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah,
I hadn't heard that, Andrew. That's very interesting.
And
well,
so
I mean,
what are they going to do if you're over the thing? I mean,
yeah.
So
it's what this pandemic is doing to the workplace is showing us a fundamental disconnect that's been there for 150 years. If you read my stuff, I rant a lot. And the thing I rant about the most is how hard it has been for us as managers to get out of the industrial revolution, the factory mindset. I'm going to stand on the second floor and I'm going to watch my factory employees down on the first floor working. And as long as I can see them working, I feel comfortable, and as long as I can measure their output in units, I feel comfortable. And this makes me feel cozy and like I know what's going on. It's not like that. It's a knowledge economy now, has been for 30 years. It's time we recognize that. You mentioned before we went live, Andrew, some employers requiring people to have their webcam on and be visible while they're working, so you can tell when they're at their desk or not. I mean, when I started in HR, I didn't understand knowledge work. Granted, it was 1,000 years ago. Cyndi Lauper was at the top of the charts, okay? Madonna, duking it out. You were there, Andrew, you remember?
Oh, yeah.
And I learned by asking my manager, how come I'll walk by their cube and they're sitting there staring at the ceiling? And they said, they're solving a problem in their head, Liz. That's what they're doing. Oh, okay. Well, that makes a ton of sense. They're solving a problem in their head. And we all do that. You might get up and chop some onions for a recipe and have a brainstorm that saves your company $1 million next year. So we have to get comfortable with that idea that, you're not just watching person to see how they produce as though they're, on an assembly line.
Yeah. Let's get into some of the basics of job.
Yeah.
So, right now there's a wide audience of people out there, some who have been laid off, some who, they've been on furlough. But as you'd said, surveys show that 70 to 80% of the people, even before this, didn't like their job. They wanted to move anyway. But nevertheless, if you are a job seeker and you haven't had to look for a job in, let's say, 10 to 15 years, what are the things that they need to think about? How do you, and there's some of this is just this crushing anxiety right now.
Of course.
And how do you manage that anxiety so that,
absolutely.
And everything from resumes to cover letters to interviews, all of that stuff. So let's just start with the basic. And this is a question someone asked. How long should my resume be?
Okay. So your resume should be 1 to 2 pages. That's an easy one. 1 to 2 pages. an academic CV, medical, maybe some other specializations, highly technical. For most of us, the vast majority of us, 1 to 2 pages is a good resume length. Let's lay out kind of the framework for job seeking, and then maybe dig a little bit into it. Does that sound okay?
Perfect.
All right. So basically, for years and years and years, you would get an inkling that you might be laid off, or you would get sick of your job, or you would get laid off and you had to find a job. You would go immediately to Monster, or back in the old days, the newspaper, now Indeed, wherever it is, Andrew Hudson's jobs list, and you would apply for jobs. First thing, let me apply for this job. I saw a job and apply for the job today because I got to be in there early. That's actually not as much of an advantage as you would think. Because if you think about it, I'm on the other end of this, right? I did HR 10,000 years and I was a hiring manager. You get a crush of resumes. Each one doesn't get as much attention as they will a week in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're overwhelmed and you think, oh, I look at all these amazing people. I'll easily hire one. Let me take the 3 best on paper, best out of this group. Meanwhile, 7, 15, 27, 35 amazing people didn't get an interview. So it's not a rush to the finish line. I must apply for this job immediately. It's stop, think, look at job ads, but then say to yourself, where is my sweet spot? Where do I intersect the market, where I show up as being the most qualified for jobs that, by the way, are going to pay me what I need to live on, and that I can do well and that are interesting. Right now, we're in panic mode, understandably. You might be thinking, I wouldn't have commuted more than 15 miles before, but now I'll commute 60 miles because I'm going to go where the jobs are. Perfectly fine. But to the degree that you can narrow down where you are the strongest candidate, that's your best opportunity to get an interview, and you need to get the interview to get the job. So it's not the spray and pray, I'm going to send out 100 applications and somebody's got to call me. No, they're not going to call you unless you look like you will solve the pain that made them put that ad out there. Right. So it is focus. It is branding. It's hard to do because our panic, our anxiety says, oh, I apply for everything. But that's why people write to me and say, I applied for 150 jobs. I heard from nobody. Right. Because there was no focus there. Right. You pull back, maybe you get a journal and write in it, or talk to a friend who really knows you and say, where should I be focusing my job search? A big one is people that were, assistant controller, and they said, I can't believe Target rejected me. Well, sweetie, of course Target rejected you, because they see you as somebody who's going to go back to be an assistant controller or a financial analyst the minute you get the first opportunity. And that's not your fault, but it's also not their fault for making that determination, because it takes time and money to train somebody up for that job, right? So you're going to brand yourself. If you take one thing away from this seminar, brand yourself for the jobs you want, not every job in creation.
Yeah.
Or these resumes that say, I can do customer service, operations, sales, finance, purchasing. No, not equally well, not equally proficiently. You can't do all those things. Decide. Remember, you can have as many versions of your resume as you want, but when you send one out, when you upload one to a website, that's the one that suits those people and their need. Very, very, very important. Now, so you're going to be thinking about it, branding yourself.
I know there's not enough time we could do 2 hours on resumes alone.
Yes.
But is it important to customize every resume to the degree that you're fitting and you're making sure that your resume is connected to the pain of that job posting?
It's a great question. If you have time, it's a beautiful thing to do. So for example, I'm going to get to your question, Jody, about salary, because that's very important. Thank you for asking that. It's great. It's a huge advantage to you to be able to customize your resume for a particular opportunity. So for example, a question that I had that I got by email in preparation for this session today was, what do you think of the summary or objective statement at the top of my resume, Liz, that says, I'm a seasoned HR pro looking for any HR VP, director, manager, generalist, or coordinator job, business partner, whatever. No. See the problem with that? That is not good branding. because the same people who are looking for an HR VP are not looking for that candidate to also be looking for a coordinator job.
Right.
We all understand the desperation. We all understand it, and we've all been there. But that's, you have to just look, what is the job? Take out the other titles that you might potentially be open to, right? That's easy. That's a clerical step. When you're going for a VP job, take out coordinator. And when you're going for a coordinator job, take out VP, director, manager, right? So that's just clerical. I talked about employers being stuck in an old mindset. We ourselves, as job seekers, can be stuck in that mindset too, because I remember my first resume, I got from the print shop 200 copies.
Right.
I don't know about you, Andy. I got them printed.
On linen paper.
On linen paper, on fancy resume paper. Now you can and perhaps should change your resume every time you use it. So take out the stuff. Don't say, I have deep experience in aerospace and law. If you're not applying for a job in aerospace and law, that can only push them away. What do they care? So we're talking about going to the buyer's point of view, that being the hiring manager you're going to work for, and saying, what are they looking for? What is the pain they are suffering? How do I connect to that? If you can't, if you have the time to customize, absolutely. If you don't, just at least take out extraneous stuff. You know how unfamiliar jargon is off-putting when you hear it in conversation at a networking event or a party? You're like, ew, I don't want to be in that conversation. It's boring. I don't understand their jargon. It's the same way in your resume. Don't keep in pharma jargon when you're going for non-pharma jobs, right? I worked on the X-15 project. Oh, I guess I should care about that. I have no idea what it is. So it's off-putting. It's a problem for military. Our military service members coming out to the civilian world, they use all this military jargon. And it's like, well, I don't know what that is. It doesn't mean anything to me. Therefore, it makes me feel insecure and it's off-putting. Yeah. Can I just quickly answer Jody's question about salary?
Great. No, let's get into these questions because there's some really good ones here.
Jody, you asked about, I didn't see the whole thing. I just saw the first few words, but it was, can I ask a company about salary? And you absolutely can. If a recruiter calls you, company recruiter or third-party recruiter, it's always appropriate to say, can you help me understand the compensation range for this job? You can go on an interview without knowing the compensation, of course, particularly if you have friends who work in the place or you feel like there's no reason to suspect that it's not going to pay the market rate, but it's also appropriate to ask. Years ago, the protocol wasn't appropriate to ask until after the first interview. That's changed now. You don't have time to waste on a job that pays a fraction of what it should. So it's always appropriate to say, oh, can you help me, with the salary range? Now, in more and more states, 20, I believe, US states, it's not legal anymore for them to ask you, what were you earning at your last job? Or what are you earning now? Nonetheless, some folks still will ask. And you can say, oh my gosh, for this job search, I'm focusing on jobs in the whatever, $50,000 range. Give them your salary target if they press you for your salary history. If you tell them that question's not legal, they might be like, I'll just go on to the next candidate. Sad to say. You just say, here's basically what I'm targeting. Is this job in that range? It's not ideal, but it's better than just getting off the phone altogether. Did I answer the question?
Can an employer ask you about your salary and what you've made?
I don't want to get off the Zoom call to look. I don't believe they can in Colorado, but don't quote me on that. I know in almost half the US states, they cannot legally ask you. And there's a little gray area. Can their representative, the recruiter for their files, push back very politely, say, if you have the range, that'd be helpful. Otherwise, let me tell you what I'm targeting myself. Yeah.
So someone asked here, and it's a good question. Can you address how you would talk about a layoff due to COVID-19 in the cover letter? What is necessary, or can it be implied?
Absolutely. I had that question come up on Twitter a couple of days ago, and as one of our Twitter Human Workplace folks said, how tacky would it have to be to ask why you left a job in March, April 2020? It's COVID-19, but sure, you can absolutely say, having left Acme Explosives due to, COVID-19, that's all you need to say. It does not imply that you were not a fantastic employee. It does not imply anything. This just like we get panicky, employers get panicky and lay off way more people than they should. They're going to call a lot of these people back, but you can't wait around. So, you say, I left due to COVID-19. That's all you need to say.
Yeah. There's a question here. And actually, this is a series of questions around the same subject. Right now, we're starting to see where there might have been one income in a household and the other person has been home taking care of the kids, or for whatever reason they haven't been working and they haven't been in the workforce for a while. And now they are finding that they have to go out and apply for a job just because of the decrease in income in the household. How do you deal with not having been in the workforce for, let's say, 10 years, 12 years, and now you're out looking for a job for the first time in that period?
That's a great question. So there's two aspects to that question. How do you deal with a long absence from the workplace, the paid workforce? First one is, how do you deal with it in you and your feelings, perhaps? And how do you deal with it in them, the person that has to accept you back, right? Back on the conveyor belt. The first one is not trivial, because we've been taught, unfortunately, since we were really little, that a lot of your self-worth, and for some people, all of their self-worth, is wrapped up in their job title and their career.
Yeah.
I think you said, Andrew, not long ago, why is our go-to conversation starter question with a new acquaintance, what do you do?
Yeah.
That's
I'm sure considered rude in some countries.
It's rude. I'm sure that at times you would like to say, I am a musician. I play bass, bitch. I mean, I do what I feel like doing. I sing opera. And this idea that your business card defines you is unfortunate. It's unhealthy, because that's not health, right? Is that what I do for a job? Some people, their heart is in it. It is them. It's beautiful. It's great. Some people, a job is a job to pay the bills so they can pursue their other passions. That's your choice. But we have been trained that you're less worthy somehow if you don't have a good job and you don't get paid well, and you don't have a big title, all that. And obviously, we know a lot of people rest on that, like, oh, I am now a director, and so you little managers and nothing. It's just like high school. And that's how the system is built, so that, the higher up you go, the more bought in you are, and the more you take that mantle of, like, I'm really something. So when you haven't been working a long time, that can really work on your nerves. It can be really hard on you. Once again, I'm going to say, get a journal, any notebook, any loose paper, anything, write about all that. You have so much more power than could ever be contained in a business card or a resume or a little conversation about what do you do. You have experiences, you have a life story, you guys, that no one else in history has ever had or ever will have. You have something really powerful and unique. And a lot of this idea of how do I go back out there and present myself to the world and feel worthy and be worth a salary is getting that internally. Maybe sounds touchy-feely. It's not. It's really knowing that when you're employed and when you're not employed, you are powerful, way more powerful than you know. You have overcome things. You have dealt with things. This comes out. You feel that power sometimes when you push up against the resistance. So I tell you a little story. I was doing a live job search workshop and a woman came in and she said, I was a VP in a bank in Denver. I was a VP in a bank. I worked my way up in this bank from walking in like the day I graduated from college as a teller. I worked my way up. I'm an assistant VP, whatever. And I left because my mom was in ill health and might die. And I stayed by my mom's side and I took care of her. I was privileged to do that for 2 years and she passed on. And when I went back, the first time I sat in a meeting, a recruiting meeting, an interview, the recruiter said to me, why do you think that you deserve to get back in?
Wow.
Yeah. Why do you think you stepped off the conveyor belt and lost value like a car driving off the lot? And she found it in herself to say, I understand and respect your point of view. I'm looking for the employer who feels like all I have done is gained through that experience of being with my mom during her decline.
Yeah.
And she left there and it gave her strength. It gave her self-esteem, saying, wow, that was so insulting. But it helped me remember that I don't need everybody to like me. I need one. And you guys need one. You need one hiring manager to see what you can do. And it's tough to train your brain to say, this is fine. Oh, I got a rejection letter. This is fine. These guys ghosted me. Okay, fine. You're going to have to kiss a lot of toads. In this job market, or even any job market, you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs. And getting good at saying, fine, they didn't get me, they don't deserve me, on to the next one.
Is it too cutesy to put on your resume, stay-at-home dad, skills, transportation management, organizational projects? I mean, is it too cutesy to kind of like tie that into what you did as a stay-at-home parent, or is that real? I mean, because to me, I mean, as a semi-stay-at-home parent, I mean, I worked harder than I worked at some of my jobs.
You know, Andrew, it's a fantastic question. And the thing about cutesy or not cutesy or serious or jocular is it's branding, right? And that is an incredibly individual choice. No matter how you go out there, totally buttoned down, you know, three-piece suit, formal business, or totally casual, artsy, whatever, not everyone is going to like you. You cannot try to contort yourself into pretzel shapes trying to please this unknown mass of people. Every single HR person, every single recruiter, every single hiring manager has their own likes and dislikes. You are out there trying to be yourself and bring in the people who are going to get you. Unfortunately, you know, if it worked to try to be who they want you to be, then I would teach it, because I want people employed. It doesn't work. It doesn't work anyway. It doesn't matter what you put on your resume. Some people are going to be into it. Some people are not. So if you like the idea of breaking down the house dad and the stuff that I did, do it. Try it. You know, there is no reason not to.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the secrets of the corporate recruiters. You know, I have this vision sometimes of like the Wizard of Oz, and they're behind this big curtain and they're making decisions about who gets hired and who gets not. And then you hear, oh, they're only looking at your resume for 30 seconds. And then, oh, there's a gap in your resume. God forbid, we're going to take a minute and find out why there's a gap. I mean, what are the real things that recruiters are going through? And I get them in the sense that, you know, they have those god awful performance evaluations at the end of the year, and their questions they get asked are, did you hire the best talent? So they want to be your advocate. But, you know, some of them, I mean, they're not the subject matter experts when you're applying. They're checking off a box. Do you meet the criteria that is connected to the job posting? What are things that job seekers need to know about recruiters that can help them?
Absolutely. I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to jump to Jacqueline's question that just popped up about how to get through the ATS, the automatic applicant tracking system. So corporate recruiters have a wicked tough job. An average recruiter is going to have 30 to 150 requisitions on their desk. Literally, they have dozens and dozens of jobs they're trying to fill at once for multiple hiring managers around the company. So they are under siege. They are like driving into a snowstorm with the snow hitting the windshield, you know, and you can't see through it. Really tough job. That is why they're going to glance at your resume for a few seconds. It's a bad system, as I've mentioned. It is a bad system. Recruiting is broken. It's just dysfunctional. So one of the ways to get noticed by a corporate recruiter is to customize the resume. Go ahead, take the keywords from the ad and put it in the resume. That's going to get it pulled up in an automatic search, in a you know, software-wise keyword search. Bring in anything relevant to that business. If you worked in, let's say, one of the big four consulting accounting firms, and you worked in that vertical that this company is in, the one that you're applying to, mention that. Bring in every bit of relevance that you can, right? Bring in every bit of relevance that you can. And also keep in mind that the recruiter is the clearinghouse. They're getting hundreds and thousands of resumes and applications. Behind them, inside the corporation, right, behind the wall, is the hiring manager who actually has the job opening. I'm talking about a department manager in one of the departments inside where you're ultimately going to work once you get past the recruiter. You can reach out to that person too. If you've read any of my stuff about pain letters, that's a letter that goes to the hiring manager and avoids the recruiter for just the reason you mentioned. They're overwhelmed, right? So you're going to the person with the pain, the person who may be losing sleep because they only have one job opening to fill and they could really use 4 people on deck, right? So I won't go into the whole pain letter mindset and methodology now, but you can look up pain letter. You'll see this, everything I've written about that. We invented pain letters here, Human Workplace, about 15 years ago for exactly this reason.
Well, and
Get to the hiring manager.
And just to make sure everyone knows, a pain letter is, I'm just paraphrasing you.
Sure,
it's a
sure.
way of looking at a job posting and identifying the pain that they are trying to solve. And your cover letter is not so much a cover letter saying, hey, look, I'm going to repeat everything I said on my resume and put it in my cover letter, and it's going to say nothing new. It's about how you can help solve the pain. Is that about right?
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you for that summary. Basically, when you write a pain letter, you have to know the hiring manager's name. You have to be able to reach them. Email is, or snail mail is a good way to reach them. Better than LinkedIn, I think. A lot of people don't look at their LinkedIn inbox ever. And you start right off by a pain letter, unlike a cover letter, by acknowledging them. Dear James, I was happy to read your CEO's blog about how kelp is the new hemp. I couldn't agree more, blah, blah, blah. Paragraph break. I can only imagine that due to your new distribution deal with Wolfgang Puck, your marketing team must be up against the wall. You're being with them. This is a sales technique. You go around to the side of the table that they are on and feel their pain and sit with them there and say, hey, look, I don't know. I don't presume to know your life, but I can only imagine. I wouldn't be surprised to hear. So it's a soft approach, but it does say, I wonder if this is kind of poking on the pain a little bit.
Okay.
I wonder if you're dealing with this. And then you tie it back to you. When I was at Wiggly Devices, we had a similar situation and we narrowly pulled it out. No bragging, no bombast. You're saying, yeah, that stuff is hard. We kind of figured it out. If any of this stuff warrants a phone call, let's get on the phone or start an email correspondence. Very simple. If it's a printed page, it's just a little bit of black text on a white page. So it's appealing to read. It's not paragraphs and paragraphs about your experience. Remember, they don't care. They don't care about your experience. They're driving into the snowstorm also. The hiring manager, snow is hitting the windshield. They can't even get through the day. They're thinking, oh my gosh, the kid is still out of school and I got all this stuff. My boss is on me. So you have to show up like the person with the morphine. You have to show up like somebody that could help them in their pain, which is not by saying, here's me and here's me. Biggest problem, people fall into this trap of like, you need to know about me. No, I don't. Yeah. I've hired, I don't know, over 10,000 people. And I didn't hire them because they told me stuff that impressed me about them. Them talking about themselves was never why I hired them, right? And that's the case for most hiring managers. It's that they got where I was and where our company was and said things that said that they got it.
Right.
They showed me that they got where we were. They were listening, they were perceiving, and they were jumping from the pain to, well, I don't know, Liz, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but have you guys ever thought about doing X, Y, Z? And then I'd be like, what? Yeah. Like, I need you. Then I'm driving home saying, I need this person on my team. That's what you want. It's not about telling them more about you. That is unlikely to break through the filter. It's hearing them, even things that are not spoken.
Yeah. Let's talk about the applicant tracking systems. Do you want to, for people that don't know what an applicant tracking system is, do you want to just give a quick brief on what they are and then how,
how to surmount, how to outwit it? Yeah, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, companies stopped looking at paper resumes and resumes sent through email, and they started implementing these applicant tracking system, ATS for short, software. You've seen Taleo, and I don't know what the other ones are. It's database software. It's really old technology from the 80s. You enter in, you type in your name and your address, and then all the history of where you've worked, and they throw it into a database, and then they do searches of keywords on the database, just like searches on LinkedIn, and they pull up applications based on the presence or absence of certain keywords. So I'm not a fan. I'm an HR person, not a fan of ATS technology. For me, it drives people away when you want to be bringing them in. But the way to outwit that, or the way to get through that, is use the keywords from the job ad, definitely, in your applications. Because Anybody that is doing a keyword search will pull up those applications and see them as they decide who to invite for an interview. A human being has to see your stuff. A computer is not going to invite you for an interview very often. So a human is going to see it. So what you want to do at that moment when a human being looks at your application is be human yourself, to grab something in them. That's why when they say, what were your tasks and duties at this job? Don't list the tasks and duties. If you're a customer service rep, we know what the tasks and duties are, right? If you're an RN, you could be specific about things that not every RN in a particular department, obstetrics, gynecology, would necessarily, participate in. But otherwise, we know what they do. We know what a marketing manager does. Tell us what you left, rather, in your wake. Tell us what you accomplished in the job. I came to Angry Chocolates to start their marketing department and got them from $400,000 to $2.5 million in sales in 2 years. Okay, now that's the story. And not everybody has, these glam stories. It might be, I organized our filing system for the first time and saved, hours and hours of time looking for documents. I helped my boss re-engineer the call waiting process. Anything that you left behind, that you accomplished, that you can claim, that's what you put in that application, not the tasks and duties that literally anybody in the job would have done the same thing.
So it's a good follow-up question to this, because we talk about customizing resumes, and I'm going to make my one little pitch. Everything I do for my business is free for job seekers. So if you're a professional and you come in, you want to look for jobs, you want to post your profile, all of that is free. But I am doing a $99 resume tune-up special that's going to last just through May. So if folks want to come in and, I'm not rewriting your resume from scratch. I'm helping to reformat it and look at it. Most of the time, the information is there. It's just about putting it into a format that can help address these issues relating to applicant tracking systems, as well as some other issues. So if you are interested in that, go to my website at andrewhudsonsjobslist.com. Now, one of the questions I get often, and Julie asked this, is, your LinkedIn profile, obviously you cannot customize that for everybody that's going to look at it. So that's got to be really your really good resume, so to speak, in terms of your profile that, still is using keywords that recruiters are looking at to try and find, that you were a marketing director and you need to have those types of words in there and stuff. But anything else to add on that relating to LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. Your LinkedIn profile is your umbrella brand. And so you can have customized resumes underneath it. But the first thing most managers are going to do when they get your resume, if they're interested in you, is look at your LinkedIn profile. And by the way, your LinkedIn profile URL must be on your resume, right under your name.
Great.
You got name, city, state. We don't need street address anymore. Denver, Colorado, or Wichita, Kansas, whatever. Your phone number, your email, your professional email. So it's not going to be, partyboy97. It's going to be your professional email. Just get first name dot last name at Gmail if you can. And then your URL for your LinkedIn profile. It's easy to create that customized URL with your name in it. So it's going to be linkedin.com/IN/your name, or whatever variation on your name you have to get if someone already snagged your name. And that goes right on your LinkedIn, right on your resume. And also in the footer of your, the signature section of your emails, outgoing emails. But they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile. So it has to look like the same person who sent the resume, even if the resume is a subset or a facet of that person. And that reality that you can only have one LinkedIn profile is the best reason ever to narrow your branding and not try to be all things to all people.
Let me ask you this, because I get a lot of questions about this. There's a lot of talk about how you anticipate the questions that are going to be asked in an interview. One of the biggest questions, and the most common questions, is that first question you get. So, can you tell me about yourself? And to me, that question shouldn't be scary. It should be seen as the first and really great opportunity to start feeling like you have control in the interview itself. What's your advice for people answering that question?
I couldn't agree with you more, Andrew. I hate a lot of the standard interview questions. I don't approve, and I don't teach the standard interview questions with all the talented candidates. Why should we hire you? You called me in here. I was living my life. I'm taking this time. I'm not getting paid. Why would you ask me that? Why should I work here? It's so obnoxious, combative. They don't see it that way. Some of them are brainwashed. Since I mentioned it, I'll tell you how to answer that question. They asked an obnoxious question. Why should we hire you? You say, oh, you know what? Let me tell you what I heard your situation is and see if I'm in the ballpark. That's how you soften that. I heard you're growing 20% a year and you're looking for somebody to do this or that. Don't get into, well, I was a straight A student in school, and it's horrible. The dog and pony show, like, let me, be Hermione Granger. So I don't approve of a lot of interview questions, but I do approve of that question. Tell me about yourself, because you got to be ready here on planet Earth as an adult to talk about yourself. So couple ways to go. You can do your life story very, very, very briefly, very super briefly. Well, I grew up here in the state, and I went to State U, and I went to work for a pharmaceutical, pet nutraceutical company, and now I'm here. Or you can do work, just work. You can do, well, you know what? I started out in marketing, and along the way I made a switch into sales. It's up to you how to go. But here's why that question is so powerful for you. Like Andrew said, it's a way to start taking control of the interview. If you are feeling your power that day, if you are feeling strong, here's what you do. Oh, that's a great question. I'd love to tell you all about myself. I mean, I'm a local person, or I moved here from New York, whatever. I don't want to keep you here all night. It's okay if I ask you a question just so I can tailor my remarks and kind of be, relevant. Yeah, sure. Ask me a question, says the hiring manager. And you say, okay, I know you guys just did this new distribution deal with whatever, because you read about it on their website before the interview, right? So my question is, how are you handling blah, blah, blah? What are you doing now? You're consulting. You're consulting in the job interview. You're going around the table, like I said before, to be on the side of the table with them. You're doing consulting. You're looking for pain, because that's the only way you're going to stick in their mind. I was an HR person, million years, like I said, and I would bring candidates to hiring managers, department managers, to their office. Hey, James, this is Celia. Hey, Carolyn, this is Anais, whatever. And they would sit down and they'd have a talk. And the manager would bring the candidate back to me, or bring them to the revolving door, and they would go, and it was all very lovely and handshaky and all that, right? And the next day I would go to the manager and say, what did you think of the candidate? And they'd say, who? I said, that candidate, I brought you Cynthia 3 p.m. yesterday. Don't you remember? She's curly brown hair, and she has a Welsh Corgi. Oh, well, we didn't talk about dogs. Oh, we did. We had a whole long hallway to walk down. You got to talk about dogs. You don't remember her? I don't remember her from Adam, Liz. That's the problem. Why didn't the manager remember someone they interviewed just yesterday? This happened every day, because their mind is full of other stuff.
Right.
And the candidate, unfortunately, did not bring enough power to bust through that barrier. Yeah. Your mind is crowded. You have to be you in that chair, right? Like, so I'm not everyone. I am like loud and demonstrative and theatrical, but I'm me. And so I'm going to be me in the chair. And that's what you have to do too. You cannot shrink down and try to be less than yourself to try to please people, because you can't please them anyway. Right. So you might as well just show up. You have a better chance of getting invited back for a second interview by pushing on the manager's mindset, saying something that might startle them or they might not immediately agree with. You'll stick in their mind more so than being like, oh, I am walking on eggshells. I don't want to upset anybody. They're going to forget you like that.
Yeah. No, we have another question, and this is actually, it's so relevant right now. A lot of people are being interviewed via Zoom and via these video conferences. What advice do you give to folks who are doing interviews on Zoom? Is obviously you got to dress professionally and so forth, but it can be a little disarming. I mean, if you haven't done this before.
It's not the easiest. Yeah, I mean, you can see just right now, you have to work a little bit harder using an online tool. In face-to-face, you have all the pleasantries of spending more time together and body language and all that kind of stuff. I would say, think before you speak. face to face, you banter back and forth. There's not necessarily clear demarcations, your turn, my turn. It's a little more granular. It's a little more set in stone on Zoom. So I would take a moment, think about your answer, and even say, I'm just going to take a second and think about that. That's a great question. I want to take a second. And you can, right? Yeah. Another one is sometimes Zoom interviews, in-person interviews sometimes too, but a lot of times Zoom interviews, there's not one person. There'll be several, and they're sitting there looking at you, and it's very freaky. You can focus on one person. You can focus on the person who asked you the question, always in a group interview. You don't have to kind of like try to, I don't like group interviews. I don't think it's healthy or good. It's not fair to the candidate, but they happen. So focus on the person who spoke.
There is, here's the way that I see it. You apply for a job. Let's say you're one of 12 people that could get called back for the interview. And then maybe you get called back for a second interview. And now you're a finalist. You're one of 3 candidates that are coming in. At that point in time, any one of those finalists could do the job. I mean, they've been vetted, the references have been called, everything, but only one person is going to be leaving that room with a job offer. And, in my consulting and doing hiring myself, I've always tried to see what was the connection that one person made that got them the job offer. And what I like about your approach is this idea of this human connection, that there was, that they've turned these interviews into conversations. Because let's face it, a resume on its own, and the studies have been done, someone reading a resume is only going to get about 60% of you. They're only going to get 60, maybe 70% of who you are. Now you have the opportunity in the interviews to have, to develop a more personal connection and show your personality and tell the stories about how you did stuff. But what are those things when you're that finalist that are going to get you the job over the other 2?
You know what? It is, for me, most of the time going to be the ability to let that hiring manager know that if they hire you, their life will get easier. And I say very quickly though, right behind that, you can't always control that. And the hardest thing, leaving a situation where you didn't get the job, is not to judge yourself. Oh, I must have screwed up. I've been writing about careers in the workplace 20 some years now. And almost every day I hear from somebody who said, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. They will not always love you. You didn't do anything wrong. It's too hard on your psyche. It's too hard on your emotions to see not getting a job as some kind of a failure. Right. Maybe you wouldn't have liked the job. Maybe they didn't get you. They didn't deserve you. You have to look at it. I'm an opera singer. I've gone in a million auditions. I know they're not all going to like the way that I sing. It's not right for the part. It's not right for their concept of the show. It's fine. I'll go on to the next one. Now I realize this is different because you have to have money to pay the rent or the mortgage. And that's why a lot of people in this time are looking for what they earlier would have considered like a survival job, right? However, places that have a physical presence, if you can do it, because there's a physical danger, right, to going out every day, but they are hiring like crazy. I think Walgreens said they're planning to hire 50,000 people. Target is hiring, places that are open are hiring. If the issue is wolf and door and I have to pay the rent and I have to take any job, those places are hiring like crazy. And you can have a job like that and you can look for a sort of like career, white collar job, if that's your thing, on your free hours, because obviously Maslow rules and the rent must be paid.
I'm going to ask folks to send in their questions. You can send them into the Zoom group chat, or you can send them to me. Channel 4 will probably break in here in a minute just to let us know that our time is wrapping up with them. But I'd like to go on another 5 or 10 minutes and just see if there's some more questions out there. Can you tell what's the importance in the value of storytelling? Storytelling is such a big part of the job search, and being able to share with folks your accomplishments and actually take ownership of what you've done. That's one of the things that drives me crazy is job seekers who are they have this sense of humility, or they have to be humble. They can't really take credit for the things that they've accomplished.
You know what? It's such a great question, Andrew. Thank you. Once again, we've been trained. we've been trained to be very humble and to, and there's a place for that, and not to take credit and say, well, I was just part of a team. Well, what was your part on the team? Right? Claim it. If you did it, claim it. If you did it and it wasn't in your job description, claim it. If you did it and your manager didn't really want you to do it, but you did it, claim it. If you did it behind your manager's back, claim it. Claim everything you did. And here's how you tell a story: in your resume, in a pain letter, in your LinkedIn profile, and in an interview, right? What was wrong, what you did to solve it, and why it was a good thing. Here's an example. Bullet point. In my manager's absence, I solved a customer's thorny billing issue and saved their $400K account. It's a story. Something was wrong. Manager was gone. We see it now. We see the scene like a movie. Helicopter lands, on the runway. Angelina Jolie jumps out with, Chris Hemsworth. It's a movie. And that's what you want. You want to get to that movie part of their brain. You want to tell stories to get them to see you in action in the brain. Otherwise, you say, I have skills. I have negotiation skills. What does it mean? I have negotiation skills. We have no way to evaluate that. And we don't necessarily trust your assessment. I have negotiation skills. That could mean getting warring nations to sign a peace treaty at Camp David. Or it could be you got the vendor to throw in some extra creamers with the coffee order, right? Big difference. Tell us what you negotiated, why it mattered. People say, I built a database. It's like, did anybody need you to do that? Or was just that like for fun? What was the point of the database? I created reports. No one cares. I created the weekly sales analysis reports that showed sales by territory. Oh, you know what you did and why. That's everything. That's everything, Andrew. Relevance. Show people that your brain is working. Yes, thank you, Cynthia. Have employers see you in action. Describe the movie like a screenplay. During our acquisition, I knitted together 2 databases so the business could continue uninterrupted. Hire that person. Not, I'm a database analyst. I'm a database manager. So are a lot of people, right? Tell us what you came and saw and conquered. That's how you get, we talked about the ATS, Jacqueline's question. This is how you get out of the ATS hell into the interview. Oh, I know what I did and I know why it mattered. Not I have skills. We're not really even able to assess our own skills. Tell us how you brought that skill down off the shelf and used it and why that was a good thing.
Yeah, we have a couple questions here that people have sent me privately, but they're very common questions. How do you deal with explaining to an employer that you've been fired?
Yeah. Well, I'm an HR person and I don't think there's ever any reason to ever tell anybody other than your besties that you were fired. You left, we all left. There's no reason to say you were fired. Your ex-employer is highly unlikely to tell anybody you were fired because they don't want to take the liability for that. So you say, I left. Shake it off. Any guilt feelings, I failed. Look at the whole concept of termination for cause, unless you literally stole something or punched someone, is a power and control mechanism. And I say that as a Fortune 500 HR person, right? To keep people in line. Oh, you don't want to get fired. Get fired, man. I mean, I don't want you to get fired, okay? Let me be clear. But I was fired myself like about 3 times before I was 21. And so I built up some muscles that said, they fire you because sometimes they fire you because you're speaking too much truth. They don't want to hear the truth. So that was good for me to leave. They tried to get me on the way out by firing me. Luckily at that age, it's pretty easy to get another job. And so I don't want you to take that on you as some kind of scarlet letter. You say, I left. It was time to leave. I had learned all I could. It was a great experience at XYZ Plastics, but it was time to go. They're not going to say, well, did you get fired? If they do, that's weird. That's not normal. So, don't assume that you have to go around apologizing for your past. And it's not just being fired. Don't apologize for your career twists and turns. Explain them. Don't apologize for your creativity, your non-standard educational history. Don't apologize in general. You are perfect just the way you are right now. And
well, and there's a club of very successful people that have been fired in their lives. And I think that, even though we see that as just an absolute complete failure or a negative, or we're humiliated by it or whatever, it's not. I mean, even the people that are doing the hiring might have been fired before. And there's a lot of reasons why people are let go. And it's one of these things, you know, I know it's tough to get your arms around it and get your, because it is a traumatic experience for people.
It is traumatic. It is traumatic. Likewise, you know, the reason for leaving, if your boss was abusive, if there was some reason you had to get out, you say, you know, it was a great experience, but I wanted to keep growing and I decided to move on. Another one is a great reason for leaving. If you left without having another job or were let go, I wanted to focus on my job search full time. I didn't think I could do justice to my job, trying to do the job and job hunt on the side. So I left in order to focus full time on my job search.
Yeah.
Good. Unassailable.
You know, there's a question here from somebody that I hear a lot as well. And it's funny because I think it's a generational thing that the workforce has kind of adapted to, which is it used to be a red flag if you left a job after 2 years, or if you had a series of jobs where you're moving from one place to another. And, you know, I always tell folks that, you know, people give this rap to millennials in particular, and they say, you know, we can't trust that they're going to be here more than 2 or 3 years. And, you know, there's no loyalty, and, you know, they don't want to pay their dues, and, you know, all this nonsense. And I always tell people, I said, look, it's not that the millennials don't want to pay their dues. They want to pay their damn rent.
Thank you, Andrew. They don't want to pay their dues. Yeah, I worked in the world. I think you might be a little bit younger than me, Andrew, but we're basically from the same cohort. And, you know, yeah, it made sense to take a crappy, low-paying job because you had confidence you were going to move up. Yeah. And it was pretty much unheard of 25 years ago to not get promoted after a year or two on the job. And now it's very hard to do. I appreciate people, not just millennials, but anybody who says, I got what I got at this place. I'm taking it with me to the next place. I'm going to get paid better at the next place because what these guys gave me. The idea that you should give loyalty when you're not getting loyalty is absurd and ridiculous and anti-adaptive. It's not evolutionarily appropriate, right? Yeah. So companies that take that view, 2 years is plenty. It is plenty. I had a long talk with a third-party recruiter, executive search consultant a couple of days ago about this. And they said, used to be 5 years, then it was 3 years, then it was 2 years. Now it's a year and a half. And in some cases a year. Here's the thing. If you're working at a job and it gives you some of what you need, but not all, and you get a call from a search consultant, headhunter calling you or reaching out to you on LinkedIn and saying, hey, you know, I have this other thing. You do have to think long and hard about moving, because if that job doesn't work out, now you have to explain 2 short-term jobs. But if you feel good about it and it seems like the right opportunity and you like and trust the people, take it, because you won't have to explain the 18 months at your current job because you'll be in the new job already.
Yeah.
So everything has shifted. All the old ideas about employees, you know, pay dues. No, like you said, pay the rent, not the dues. How would you know when you were done paying dues? My oldest son is a pro wrestler in Chicago, Andrew, and he hears that a lot. As a pro wrestler, you got to pay your dues. No, you don't have to pay dues. You have to get the next gig and move up and build your platform and your audience, just like all the rest of us. So don't let people run that game on you. Sorry?
I said, and continue winning.
Continue winning. That's right.
No, it's interesting, because my theory is this, that, you know, we expect these entry-level employees to be paid $30,000 to $40,000 a year, which is what I was being paid as an entry-level employee 30 years ago. And by the way, the college tuition and the college loans that they're paying is about 5 times more than what I had to pay. There's all these additional expenses in terms of the cost of living, of housing, everything else. The kind of pressure that is being put on these young people, and then to say, oh, well, you know, we expect you to be loyal and stay here at this company, it's just ridiculous. And loyalty is a two-way streak. And I think that this really started to show its ugly head after the last recession.
Yes,
and,
you're right.
And
absolutely. It's about you. You are number one. You are the one you're focusing on. Anybody who tries to run that scam on you, you should be loyal to the company. Here's what you say to them. The United States of America is the only industrialized nation on the planet that does not guarantee employees work. It does not guarantee them employment beyond today.
Yeah.
In other words, every single other industrialized country, Britain and France and Germany and Switzerland and Poland, you have a contract. You get the job. They make a commitment to you. If they would let you go, and they are letting people go now because of coronavirus, they pay you. We don't have that. You are not guaranteed a dime. And you are not guaranteed continuation of employment or health benefits unless you're an executive. Executives have contracts. You don't, unless you're a union member or you negotiate an individual contract. So don't let anybody tell you you should be loyal. What? No, you want loyalty, you get a dog.
Yeah.
Not a cat. Cats are not loyal.
And cats aren't as loyal as dogs. I love my cat though. But...
Love cats, bud.
Okay, so someone asked, can you talk about accepting an okay job that is offered now versus waiting for a great job that might come along in a few months? I made that mistake, and I loved the okay job, but it wasn't the job that I wanted. And I actually accepted the okay job. It was through a recruiter who was getting paid a big fat commission. And so about 3 weeks after I accepted that job, I didn't even start at that job. I get the other job. And I was like, oh no, I made a commitment to this other company. I can't do that. And it's funny because the older people that I talked to were like, oh, well, you made a commitment. And the younger people are like, are you crazy? That job that they just offered you, go for it. And I was like, oh no. And so I went and I ended up taking the job. I hated it. I lasted maybe 6 months. And then I called the company that I turned the job down with. And I said, hey, I know this is kind of strange, but you think you still might want to hire me? And they did.
They did.
Yeah.
It's a different world. We're always job hunting. There's no time when we're not job hunting. There's no time when we're not job hunting. If you get a job and you don't have a job, they can't. I've had people call me or write to me and say they asked for a 2-year commitment. Well, ask them for a 2-year commitment. They're not going to make you a 2-year commitment to guarantee your employment. Why in God's name would you make them a commitment for 2 years? It's goofy. In fact, it's suspect. Why are you worried I'm going to leave? You're not confident you can keep me just based on the job and the merits? That's weird, right? Yeah. You get a job, you need a job, take the job. If you can afford to be unemployed for a few months, for sure, why not? Because it's going to be harder to job hunt when you're working full time. But if you're not in a financial situation to weather the storm, if you cannot job hunt in panic, that's the best thing. You job hunt in panic, you don't interview the same. You're keyed up, you can't sleep. Yeah. Get the rent paid, and then you get a little breathing room. If you want to restart the job search or never shut it down, it's fine. I believe we're always in job search mode. We always have to have one eye on the outside market. There's really nobody that can say, I don't have to ever worry about job hunting again. I used to go early in my career to retirement parties. When's the last time you went to a retirement party outside of a government worker? They're not a thing. So no, it's about you and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great question here that I get a lot. And it seems that this happens more with people who are in their mid-careers or a little bit past their mid-careers. They don't like what they're doing anymore. And they've risen through the ranks. They might be a senior manager, they might be a vice president, but they are applying for a job that they're being looked at as being overqualified. But they still want to work, but they're being said, well, you know what? You have way too much qualifications. If we put you in this position, you're going to get bored, or you're going to have more qualifications than your boss. And I'm not suggesting that people should dumb down their resumes or dumb down their experiences, but how do you address that with a recruiter?
That's a really great question too. A lot of people feel that they can very easily inadvertently intimidate an interviewer, either a recruiter or an HR person or a hiring manager, just by being themselves, because they have so much experience. And people get freaked out about hiring someone as experienced or more experienced than they are. I remember that feeling as a young manager, like, oh, I'm afraid to hire this person. They're smarter than me. They're going to make me look like an idiot. The older you get, the more, I don't want to say older, because wisdom comes to people at all different ages, but the more experience you get, you realize, no, I need that person on the team. What am I being so insecure for, right? Maybe I can learn from them. But a lot of people are not there. So you don't have to dumb down your experience, but in the interview, you're talking about pain. We talked about, let me ask you a question to see if I can tailor my remarks. Are you guys dealing with this or that, or how are you handling this or that? You're going to be able to see on their face, even on Zoom, if you're freaking them out because your questions are too on point. You're probably not going to get that job. You're probably not going to invest a lot of time in that relationship or that opportunity because they want somebody they can tell them what to do, and they're going to do it. One thing a lot of people do at a point in their career where maybe they have been a VP or they've had a lot of responsibility is they consult because they realize that's just too big a hurdle and they just consult, and they work on a project basis or an hourly basis, and they make just as much money. They get better income tax deductions. They have to bill enough, obviously, to cover their health insurance, but they find that way, for some reason, managers don't get freaked out by consultants the way they get freaked out by like overqualified employees.
God, isn't that the truth? That's crazy. You know, one of the things, and you talk a lot about this, fear-based management, which, you know, again, I think is that industrial revolution, post-World War II setup that, you know, just is designed to, you know, put your thumb on the employees and make sure they know damn well that, you know, you working is a favor that we gave to you. You're not working, you're not a favor to us. But you wrote here, you said, in the employee manuals, you said, there's either one of two things that you're going to see. A, we're glad you chose to work here. We don't want you to face unsafe conditions, sexual harassment, discrimination, or abusive management practices. If these things happen, we want to know about it. Or B, we have a lot of rules here, so you better memorize them and follow them. Any infractions will subject you to the harshest discipline up to and including termination. We rule and you suck.
I mean, you know, subtext, right? But the message comes through. Look, this is a weird time. And my usual, you know, fire and brimstone stuff about who deserves you and who doesn't has to be tempered right now because things are so crazy and chaotic. I want you in your power, of course, all the time. I want you saying no to the wrong opportunities. I want you to slam doors. I want you to do all that. But you know, the reality is we have bills to pay. And so there's learning in everything. And people are going to take jobs now during this chaotic time that they would not have taken during a better environment. And like you said, they might keep looking, but it's noticing more than even walking away or speaking up or pushing back is noticing, being aware of the energy in a place. And some folks are going to say, I can tell this place is dysfunctional as all get out, but I'm going to work here for 6 months and pay off my credit cards. You know what I mean? I'm going to work here and step up to a better job. Aren't we always stepping up, right? Aren't we always solving problems and learning and falling back? And life is a journey and we're always on that path. And so, you know, I don't want to say to you, don't even think, hi, sweetheart, how are you?
This is Mateo. He just wanted, I'm sorry to interrupt. He jumped in.
I haven't seen you since you were just a little pumpkin. Who is that? Squirtle? I can't tell.
No, these are
Marios.
Oh, they're Marios. I'm in the completely wrong universe. Okay.
So,
my guys,
sorry.
It's Super Smash Bros. Night and day, Andrew. Night and day.
Right.
But yeah, if you take a job, you take an entry-level job, you take a retail job, you take anything, it's your power's still in you. It doesn't change anything. You work for an abusive boss, you're going to become a Zen monk, you're going to glide through it, you're going to say, part of the story, this is going in my screenplay, it's fine. At the right time, you're going to feel your power, there's going to be an opening in the clouds, and you're going to move up to something better. You know, it's all doing what you need to do to deal with the moment and the situation at hand.
Yeah, and the fact is that many of the people that are watching this right now, they are also managers or they are in positions of power. And so this message is for them as well. I mean, it's such a more pleasant and productive place when you get rid of this attitude of, you know, who's absolutely 100% in charge and don't you guys ever forget it. I mean, there was somebody who wrote to you on Twitter, you were talking about how this might, the idea of working at home might change the work environment. And some Nimrod wrote in and said, Liz, don't you forget, I'm the manager and I make the decisions. And it's up to me as to whether or not people can work from home. And it really is. I mean, you know, someone had told me once, I thought it was a great line, they don't leave companies, they leave bosses.
Yeah.
And I think it's a combination of that because, you know, the leadership trickles down to everybody. And it's like, if there's a culture, if there's a leader that is saying, you know, this is not the company we want to be, and it's not right, and we're going to lose clients and we're going to lose profits if we treat our employees this way.
Yeah, I put that on Twitter because I just thought that's so pathetic. Like, you know, that's a person, if they were 6 years old, their mom would say, sweetheart, I understand you're jealous because Joey has a better bike than you do, but you know what? It's life lessons. Liz, don't forget, I'm the manager. Oh, babe, honey, somebody needs a hug. Like, what? Yes, you're the manager. Isn't that enough? Isn't that enough that you have the title and you the budget and you decide on the performance increases and all that stuff? But you also don't forget, oh, I'm in charge. Like the whole point of being a manager is not relying on that conferred power from the organization, but using your own power. And leadership is a journey, just like I'm talking about. We're all on a journey. It's a journey of stepping into your power and letting go of fear. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations, they reinforce the fear. Don't let the employees get away with anything. Instead of saying, hey, we hire brilliant people, set them free, let them do their thing. I was, HRVP at a company that grew from 100 people when I started to 10,000 people when I left in about 9 years, technology company. And we never had an attendance policy for salaried employees. And I would go to HR events and I would speak and I would say, we don't have an attendance policy. Policy is called the come to work policy. If you're doing okay and you can come to work, come to work. Otherwise, we don't count any of the stuff. We count vacation because by law we have to, but otherwise personal days, we don't keep track. Do your job like you could be working at midnight at home. We don't care, we don't care, we don't care. It's just so much easier and it's so much more trusting. And we never, ever, ever had a problem. And we never let anybody go for attendance reasons because they're adults and we hire adults and we want them to know that we know they're adults. And there would be HR people that were down with it and say, my manager would never go for that. And there were ones that would be scandalized and shocked and say, oh, how can you? You can't possibly, there'll be abuse. Abuse. Most of the abuse that happens in the American workplace is by employers to employees. Right. It's not employees stealing time or whatever. Somebody works until midnight. How can you ding them for not being in the office at 8 o'clock the next morning? So when you say, look, you're a grown-up, you're not only a grown-up, you're a really smart, brilliant person. We're thrilled that you came to work here. Like we are so grateful that you come here every day. My job in HR is to make it easier for you. What can I do to take away obstacles? Tell me if we have a stupid policy. And they would. Sign of a healthy company is that there's debate and discord all the time about what should we do and what should we not do. Sign of an unhealthy company is there's none of that because people are too afraid.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difference between what are reasonable expectations and which are in outrageous laws. I mean, it's so yeah. I couldn't agree more. Well, Liz, I really appreciate you being here. There is hold on. Let's see. Is there other questions here? How do we clone and insert you into a million HR departments? Hey,
biologist. I know so little about that whole topic.
Tell everyone a little bit more about what you're doing and what they can how they can follow you. Sure. And find out about what you're up to.
Well, thank you so much for that, Andrew. First of all, I just want to say I've been following Andrew and worshiping Andrew for about 20 years. And before we ever had a conversation, I heard him play with his jazz combo. It was awesome. And he's just a maestro in every single way and a guru. And if you're not familiar with the Andrew Hudson's job list, you got to subscribe. It's motivational, it's educational. There's job listings there, but he's just the greatest. And I'm so grateful that you included me.
Thank you so much.
Andrew. And an unbelievable musician as well. Our company is Human Workplace. Our mission is to reinvent work for people. We have courses and ebooks, and it's all at humanworkplace.com. We got some stuff special right now, of course, because of the times. And Twitter, it's Human Workplace, Instagram, Human Workplace, LinkedIn, just Liz Ryan. And very, very glad that you guys were able to join us today.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, we're going to do another seminar on Friday. I'm looking for suggestions because I want to continue these seminars. And so if you have ideas of topics you'd like to see covered, if there's people you want to see that I can invite to this, I got a really good surprise guest. I'm not going to announce it yet, but I'll announce it very soon. And again, go to andrewhudsonsjobslist.com. Also, I do have a copy of this video that I will send to folks that didn't get to see it. And thank you so much, Liz. It's just been a treat. And,
thank you, Andrew. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.